This is Charlie Parsons for the Stomping Ground, powered by Wow Hydrate and available on DAZN. Mr. Adam Smith, legend. How
Charlie,
are we, mate?
great to see you, mate. Great to see you.
Always great to see you.
Always good to see you, and see you every day of my week.
I know, and we
as
always
it
stop and have a
unfolds.
proper conversation.
We
This
do.
time we do it on camera.
Do you know what we do? Because I have always liked the way you go about business.
Thank you.
You've started, I remember a while ago, and you know, like everyone, I think you've learned and you've sort of moved into the system and into the business brilliantly, and it's a pleasure to see you grow, and you're a great guy, so it's lovely to see you, as always.
Thank you, Adam. Likewise. Let's talk a little bit about it. Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. It's that big fight feel all over again. Crazy venues all week, as everything is always with Riyadh season. I suppose, firstly, a couple of talking points. One, is this the most respect that Daniel Dubois has ever had going into a fight by pundits, media, fans?
Good question, Charlie. I think it is from the sort of hardcore trade, but I still talk to my friends and they're like, yeah, who is this guy? Daniel Dubois, AJ's just going to win easily. And I think that some people don't know his story, or maybe they remember the Joe Joyce fight or the Usyk defeat, but he's got real momentum, and I think because of that, the relationship with Don Charles, the Jarrell Miller war really, and the fact that I think he became a man that night in many ways, and then obviously what happened with Filip Hrgović, where he took his lumps and bumps in the first 2 or 3 rounds, he got on with it, and he broke Hrgovic's will and his heart, and you could see the jubilation at the end of that, almost a freedom for him. So maybe if he became a man in the Miller fight, that was the sort of point where people started to take him really seriously. IBF heavyweight title came. I'd love for him to have won it in the ring. It didn't happen, but he defends it here on a huge stage, in a fight that I think was always going to happen at some point, but sees himself as a big underdog. But I think that, yes, he has had more respect from us because we've been around him in the last year, where he's found his psychological strength, where he's found some momentum, some belief. And I think that makes Daniel really dangerous. Dynamite Daniel Dubois, maybe dangerous Daniel Dubois. For nothing to lose, really. No one's predicting him to come through this against AJ. But we've seen heavyweight upsets, we've seen battles of Brits over the years, and funny things can happen in that ring. So look, he starts an underdog, and in my book I think AJ will prevail, but maybe not without some rough moments along the way, and I think if Dubois is still in it after 4 or 5 rounds, I think it swings. He's the younger man, he's the man with something to really prove, and he's the man who wants it so much. So yeah, not quite sure he's as good as AJ, but he's getting respect, as he rightfully should be. He's looking relaxed this week, and I think the only question is the absence of Don Charles. Spencer Oliver spoke to him this morning. He said he's not well. Fine. If he's not well, he's got to stay away from his fighter and come back on fight night. But I don't particularly like that.
Yeah, what does that mean to you? How do you perceive that on fight week?
Well, I think teams should be all around a fighter. I think I've seen so many fight weeks, Charlie, over the years, and there is something about the right people around you. And I know that he's got Kieran Farrell and the guys and everybody but Don, but Don Charles is a big guy, and
he's a big character, isn't he?
He is a big character, and he's a really good trainer. And I think that I'd like to have seen him, look into AJ's eyes to sort of size up the other team. And yeah, I know it's only edges of psychological warfare going into the battle, which obviously they've worked long and hard for, and it's going to come down to who's best on the night. But there is twists and turns during a fight week, and it could all come down to that, those fine margins when you're walking into Wembley Stadium on Saturday night. Now, Daniel, the good news is Daniel looks really calm and cool, relaxed, and at ease. So does Joshua, by the way, extremely, which is a good thing. But I miss Don. I miss the Don Charles effect around fight week. So for me, it's a slight letdown. Yeah.
Well, we're yet to see, and I don't want to talk about the press conference too much, because obviously when this comes out, the press conference will all be done. But what we have seen from Daniel Dubois in the build-up, and we know that, look, he's never going to be a big talker, and there's almost these preempted one-liners as such. We've seen him punch the cake with AJ's face on it. We saw the little, you know, if we want to go now, we can, at that face-off that we had.
The Baby Miller line as well, yeah.
If you're AJ, are you just seeing it as very like orchestrated and premeditated as such? You don't take much away from that, right?
I think AJ just concentrates on his own state of mind and his own day-by-day preparation for what is really just business for him. He's been to Wembley 3 times before, obviously deep on the undercard of Froch Groves. The huge night against Klitschko, where he proved a lot of doubters wrong by coming through adversity. And maybe Vladimir was a couple of punches away from changing the whole of AJ's career, but he came through that epic, and it set him up for obviously the bigger fights to come and the nights. He hasn't won every time. He's come back. He's shown his strength. He now stands on the history, the table of 3-time heavyweight champion, which is a big legacy for him. And I think it's really important that he gets the Fury fight and he tries to become undisputed. And I don't think he'll be happy until that happens. I think Anthony loves his boxing. So I think for him it's just another week. But of course he's with Ben Davison, and this is the first big fight that he's been in with Ben.
Is this the best version of Anthony Joshua we've ever seen, do you think?
Do you know what? That question was asked to me on Simon and Jim's show earlier on TalkSport, and it's a really good question again, Charlie. I think that it's hard to compare, like with fighters in different eras, it's hard to compare Lennox Lewis to Muhammad Ali to Jack Dempsey to bouncing forward to Tyson Fury. Very hard. Okay, everyone can have those mythical matchups, but different eras, different pressures, different weights, different surroundings. So it's hard. And I think AJ has developed as a very strong, rounded heavyweight who seems to be learning more from each coach he has, and has got an incredibly good relationship, it seems, with Ben Davison. He seems to be absolutely loving being around the young kids, the Moses Ataumas, the McCormack brothers,
seems like an
Lee
exciting
Wood.
gym to like.
It does. It's a buzzing gym. I think he's really enjoying it. He loves his craft. He loves boxing, and that hasn't died at any point. So is he the best version? I think he's probably back to his best. His jab looks great again. His right hand's carrying real power. He's executing game plans fantastically under Ben, but against Otto Wallin and against Francis Ngannou. It's not Daniel Dubois, and it's certainly not Usyk and Fury. So we'll have to look back in a few years' time to see when the best time for AJ was, but I think he's right up there with the best version of himself.
A couple more quick ones. I could genuinely sit here and pick your brains on this fight all night. Something that Daniel's hit back at, and I suppose you can only beat what's in front of you, right? And we knew that IBF was going to become vacant at some point. The IBF don't allow rematches. Is Daniel Dubois a legitimate world champion, Adam?
I think you have to say yes. In a world where belts are belts and governing bodies are governing bodies, we all crave for the undisputed, like we had with Fury and Usyk, like we've got with Bivol and Beterbiev. Everybody wants to see one champion. We know boxing, we know the politics, we know how difficult it is. I think the fight with Filip Hrgović, if anything, should have been for a world title. I mean, look, I don't think Oleksandr Usyk should lose any belts. He's the undisputed heavyweight champion. He's got 4, 5, 6, 7 belts, and no one's beaten him.
That's the IBF doing IBF type things, right?
Okay, so the IBF have a new champion. That champion, in my opinion, should have been the winner of Hrgović and Dubois, which ultimately it was. It was a shame that Daniel didn't win it on the night. So is he a world champion? I remember Riddick Bowe chucking the WBC belt in the dustbin at Heathrow and saying, Lennox Lewis, there it is, it's in the garbage can. And then he fought Razor Ruddock, and he eventually became interim and then WBC champion. So it has happened before. Daniel Dubois is the heavyweight champion for the IBF going into this fight, and if AJ wins, he becomes a 3-time heavyweight champion. Whatever you look at it, the politics, the belts, that's history. But the most important thing is who wins on Saturday night. Because for Daniel, it catapults him into huge money and massive fights. And if it's AJ, we all want the Fury fight.
Does it feel a little bit like, regardless of the outcome of December the 21st and Fury Usyk, that if Anthony Joshua is victorious on Saturday night, that this is probably the closest and most confident we could ever say we are to seeing Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury? And God, you would have been asked that question about 60 million times.
I think we were really close to seeing AJ Fury a few years back, and I remember speaking to Anthony himself and Tyson on the phone, both of them on the same day, saying they really wanted the fight. It didn't happen. I think think it was before Christmas. I think it was when he fought Derek Chisora. It was probably a little too tight for AJ. They were probably just taking that risk and they didn't want it. But the fighters wanted the fight, and they've always wanted the fight. And I believe now with Turki Al-Sheikh and how he's changed boxing, that fight will happen, and it will double happen in 2025. I think we'll get one at Wembley. I think we'll get one in Riyadh, maybe in that order. And I think it's got to happen. And I think actually, win or lose against Dubois, win or lose against Usyk, it's the fight that has to be made. So I would be surprised if it wasn't. I think AJ will come through on Saturday night. Fury Usyk is a little tighter, but even if Usyk wins again, Joshua might want that third fight with Usyk for undisputed. But money talks, fans talk, and AJ Fury will happen unless Tyson gets badly knocked out on December 21st and decides enough's enough. I don't think so. I think AJ Fury happens, and I think it happens twice in 2025. And who wins? We'll talk about it then.
The fans, that old line.
The fans.
Finally, quickly, prediction for Saturday night?
I think Anthony Joshua's experience on the big occasion, I think his partnership with Ben Davison, which looks an incredibly close one now, I think his resume, and I think the fact he's a slightly better all-round technician with an edge in power too, makes him victorious on Saturday night. I expect AJ to get the job done within the first few rounds, but I will caveat that. I've been speaking to Shane McGuigan, I've been speaking to Don Charles, I've been speaking to a lot of people around Daniel. I think if he's still there after 5 or 6 rounds, I think it's a very, very different story. He could win it late, Dubois, but I don't think he'll get there.
Adam Smith, top man, thank you as always for your time. It's a pleasure. Thank you, mate.
Cheers, Charlie.